Well, welcome to a new episode of Unraveling Success. First of all, this is our first episode of 2026. And as you will notice, there are some changes. I don't have my normal background. And so the reason why is as we are growing and expanding, I gave up my office and moved to a different office so that the flow in the agency could be a little bit better. And so this is my new digs, and I just moved in yesterday, so not at all comfy and cozy and at home yet. But that being said, life goes on, and so I wanted to make sure that I got this episode recorded. And also, 2026 is going to look a little different, not only for my office, but also for the podcast. So the last 2 years, we've had so many phenomenal guests on the podcast, and it's been really fun to connect and meet people and hear stories and learn their lessons. But what I would like to do this year is kind of unpack the things that we learned from variety of different people, just lessons that I've pulled forward, and I want to just take a minute and just marinate on them a little bit. One of the things that I do, some of you might know this when I read a book. Um, if I get my hands on a book, which I always get a paper copy, I write in them and I highlight in them. And then when I'm done, I actually go through them and I take the highlighted parts um, and I put it in AI. I used to do it, I used to put it in a Word document, but I put it in AI now. And then I just kind of pull forward the key takeaways and so that I'm not in a situation where I'm just information dumping in my head, but that I'm actually taking time to learn the lessons and implement the things from the books that are most applicable to me. So, I guess in the same way that I read books, I'm going to do that with podcast over the past 2 years. And so these are going to be much more unfiltered. We're going to be actually primarily on YouTube with probably a couple other listening platforms, but stay tuned for that. It's really going to be just short episodes, really just from my heart, unscripted because I sound like a robot when you try to script me. So I do best when I'm unscripted. And um and that's it. It's as simple as that. So this first episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about authenticity in business. I think that this is something that as AI becomes more prevalent, and we all know playing with AI is super fun, but it can also add an element of completely creepy because it's hard to tell what's real and what's not real. And so I also think, as AI grows and people have a hard time telling what fake is versus not, I think that's really leaked into anytime you're trying to sell something or pitch something. Today's buyers are so much more sophisticated than even 10 years ago. And that tends to have this feeling as though, if someone feels that though they're being sold to, there's just this instant shield that goes up and it's a block, and people are much more leery to move forward on things. They're taking much more time to say yes. And there is pause and a suspicion, and how we break through that is just being truly authentic. And I always say that you are your own cutting edge because there's nobody else like you. And being able to be brave enough to be authentic is the very thing that's going to cut through all the noise that's out there, because authenticity is sometimes rare. So I think clients have a really good BS meter. I think it's a call for authenticity in business is right now. And there's three things in specific that, as I look back in my business career, that I can really identify were times where I have been taught in a way that was not authentic to me, that was the right way to do things. And over time, I learned that it was not the right way for me, and I changed course and chose the way that was right for me. And I wanted to give those examples because I feel like stories can help bring things full circle. The first thing I wanted to share about was back when I started in insurance. I was 20 and I was working at the Big Red Farm, and they were really like a straight up cold call type of agency. So, you get a list of people and you call. We would even use the coal, I think it was the coal index, but it was basically like the news, or not the news, the phone book. Anyway, and X dates and all kinds of stuff like that to just call. And it was really just about picking up the phone and dialing and dialing and dialing. And I will tell you that that's the only way I was taught to sell. And that is not authentic to me. And so I, it was really crushing as a 20-year-old female when I first started in insurance. The rejection was really heavy for me. And so then I had this idea for a long time, because I was taught there is this one way to do sales, that I was not good at sales, but I am good at sales. There's been people that are wildly more successful than me, but I have been able to bring an organization from 0 to 7 figures in 11 years, and I can't really be that bad at sales. Like I said, I there are people that are wildly more successful than I am, but I don't think that that number tells me that I'm bad at sales. And when I started out on my own, building my own book of business from scratch, 10 years later, after I started at the farm on the independent side, I really stayed true to who I was. And I grew my business through referrals and through relationships and through authentic connections. And it has been what has been the backbone of Aspire is relationships, loving people, being in a helping profession, going into things without an agenda to get something out of somebody. When I go into a networking event, when I go into meeting somebody for coffee, lunch, I have 0% of even a thought of what's in it for me. I'm excited to meet this person. I'm excited to hear their story. And I know that if they're the right fit, things are going to click and we'll move forward. And if it's not the right fit, I don't want it to move forward. I want to do business with people that like connect with me and I connect with them. And so business can be enjoyable and it can be a mutually beneficial situation. So that would be an example of a way that I was taught was the way to do sales. But really, what was true to me was so different than that. And it was successful. And I would say, just don't necessarily live in a box, right? Think outside of the box. If you're told or taught to do something one way, it's good to question. And the next way that um, I was taught to do things in a, I guess what I wrote down when I was kind of outlining what I was going to talk about was linear leader, Beth. Because when I first started the agency, the first couple of years, it was just me. And I am so thankful to have my husband, Adam, that was so helpful for me during those times. Did a ton of data entry and helped with quoting like you would not even believe. And he helps me, or has always run the finances for the agency. Thank God that I have a counterpart like that. But I was taught leadership in a very top down way. And it was really hard for me because I am not a scorekeeper and I am not a top down leader. I am a come up from underneath you, empower you, lift you up, not in a way where there's not accountability, but in a way where I want to see you win. I want to be wind in your sails. I want to be an encourager, but I'm not a, strict tit for tat, count every minute type of person. Like I want the people that are with me to be with me because I want to be here, not because I have to be here. And I want this place to be a place that feels like a warm hug when they walk in. Not that there's not expectations, but I don't think people flourish under an iron fist. So it was really hard for me when I was learning leadership because I was learning and then I was realizing how different this was than my natural tendencies. And so for the longest time, I felt as though I was not ever going to be a good leader. Like I remember looking at charts and how to track all these things, and I was just so discouraged. Um, until I did a variety of different assessments and really started learning my unique leadership style. And I understood that these ways that were not sitting well with me and what I was learning was not at all authentic to me. And that was, well, about 5 years ago now, where things really clicked from a leadership standpoint. It really became a huge passion of mine. And the struggles that our team had were really erased in a very short amount of time because I was able to stand up strong and understand my leadership style and totally able to step into my leadership abilities without questioning myself anymore. So in a way, I guess you could say it unclipped my wings, and I will be forever grateful for that. But it's again, something that you're taught in a way that you are not being authentic to yourself. But when I chose and I turned into being my authentic self for how I lead, that's when things just really leaps and bounds went forward. So last, and I'll share this, I feel like this is something I've seen a lot in business, and I know this can be a rather sensitive topic, but that's okay. I'm going to share this experience with you anyway. As a female in business, one of the things I've observed, and I've had this conversation quite a few times, is there's a lot of women that will mimic masculine tendencies that are not authentic to them because they see it as a way to mimic what is successful. And therefore, you lose the realness and the authenticity and the edge of what you really are by just being a woman. And I don't mean just, but what I'm saying is the power is just being in who you are, not trying to be someone else, not trying to take on somebody else's traits or characteristics, but just truly being who you are, because you know what? Everybody else is taken. So that's one of the things. I have a good girlfriend, and she actually has the really humbling story where she talks about how she really flipped from her feminine to her masculine and how it really impacted the business that her and her husband had, and then also her and her husband's relationship. And, I feel like she really speaks about it from a very tender-hearted spot, and is definitely has come full circle in that journey. But I do feel like it is something that I see. And I feel like, as if you are a woman in business, I would just encourage you that you don't have to take on traits that are not authentic to yourself in order to mimic what you feel like might make you successful. So I do feel like that is something that um, can be the almost a subconscious pressure, and just that we have permission to just fully be who we are, knowing that in business, that is going to attract the people. I always say birds of a feather flock together, and that's part of the reason why I have loved building my business on a referral basis, is because we're connecting with people that are birds of a feather, right? So we all flock together and we can all do business together, and it creates um, just a really special environment. So I would just encourage you to take some time and maybe do a quick self assessment. And, are you truly being authentic? Are there areas that are maybe you're mimicking something that you feel like you're supposed to do to find success, but it's not 100% you? And is that possibly a barrier to your next level of success? With that, I will leave you, and thanks for joining me for my first new episode of our new format for Unraveling Success.